Testimonies like this are what the Bible calls notable miracles, the kind that leave entire cities in awe, just as in Acts 4 verse 16, where even the enemies of the gospel said, "What shall we do to these men?" For indeed, a notable miracle has been done through them, and we cannot deny it. This is the kind of story that changes everything. A situation everyone thought was hopeless suddenly turned into something no one could have imagined. Beloved, stay with this testimony until the end and witness for yourself how Jesus is still working powerfully today, moving through raw, undeniable signs and wonders, proving that He alone is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Hebrews 13 verse 8. My name is Halima. I come from Maiduguri, a place known for its dust, its prayers, and its struggles. I was once the wife of an imam, a man respected by many, loved by his people, and feared by those who did not share his faith. But when sickness came into our home, everything changed. I remember sitting beside him as his breathing grew weak, his eyes dimmed, and his once strong hands trembled in mine. I prayed as I had always been taught, reciting the words I knew by heart, but inside me there was a silence I could not explain, like my prayers were hitting a wall. When he finally passed away, I felt as though the sun had set forever in my life. The people from the mosque helped for a short time, but pity doesn't last long when everyone is struggling. Soon, I was left alone with 3 children, an empty pot, and a heart filled with fear. Nights became longer than days. Hunger became a frequent visitor, and tears often washed my face before sleep. To survive, I began to sell dates in the marketplace. Every morning I would gather my small basket, wrap my scarf tightly, and whisper a prayer before leaving the house. Some days I sold enough to buy food, other days I came home with nothing but disappointment. Still, I told myself that God saw me. I told myself that one day He would remember me. But as the weeks turned into months, that hope began to fade. The woman who once believed in everything had started to doubt everything. I was tired of struggling, tired of waiting, tired of believing in a God who seemed so far away. It was one of those hot days when the air felt too heavy to breathe. The market was crowded, and the sun burned through the cloth on my head like fire. I had set up my small wooden table near the corner where most people passed by, hoping that I might sell enough dates to buy food for my children that night. My dates were few, just a handful left from what I could afford that week. I arranged them neatly, whispering under my breath for God's mercy. As I waited, I noticed a group of young boys laughing nearby, their feet kicking up dust as they ran between the stalls. In a moment, one of them stumbled into my table. Everything happened so fast, the legs of the table cracked, and my basket of dates spilled across the ground, rolling into the dirt. I tried to catch it, but the wood gave way completely, and my small business lay broken before my eyes. I froze. My heart sank. That basket was all I had. Without it, I had nothing. The crowd moved on as if nothing had happened. Some looked at me with pity, others turned their faces away. I knelt on the ground, picking up the dusty dates one by one, tears mixing with the dirt on my hands. I whispered, asking why. Why would God let this happen after all the pain I had already endured? Then, in the middle of my sorrow, I heard a calm voice behind me. It was a man, not someone I knew. He wasn't from the market. His clothes were simple, and his face carried a peace that felt strange to me. He came close and knelt beside me. He didn't say much, only helped me gather the fallen dates. His hands were gentle. I noticed he wore a small wooden cross around his neck. When we finished, he placed his hand lightly over the broken basket and closed his eyes. I thought he was just saying a kind prayer for me. But as he prayed, I felt something like warmth spreading around us, though the sun had already made the air hot. I didn't understand it, but for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. He looked at me with kindness and told me softly that I should not give up, that sometimes God uses broken things to bring blessings. His words stayed in my heart even after he left. I didn't know his name. I only knew that he was different. There was something about him that carried peace, not pride. That night, I went home with the few dates I had left. My children were hungry, and I gave them what I could. Before sleeping, I remembered that man's words about broken things and blessings. I didn't understand it then, but I would soon. Because the next morning, when I went back to the market, something happened that no one could explain. When I woke up the next morning, I felt heavy from worry. My basket was still broken, and I had no money left to buy new dates. But something inside me pushed me to go back to the market. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was habit, I didn't know. I only knew I couldn't stay home watching my children sleep with empty stomachs. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd be truly honored to have you join this growing family of faith and reflection. Every new heart adds something beautiful to our community. As you listen to this powerful testimony of transformation, we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. Share where you're watching from and what stands out to you in this journey. Your thoughts and reflections aren't just comments. They help shape a genuine dialogue around experiences that have the power to change lives. I picked up the same broken basket, tied it with a piece of rope, and walked through the quiet streets of Maiduguri as the morning call to prayer echoed through the air. The market was just opening. Sellers were arranging their goods, calling out prices, and children were running errands for their mothers. When I reached my small spot, I uncovered the basket and froze. My breath caught in my chest. Inside the basket were not the few dirty dates I had left from yesterday. It was full. Completely full. Shiny, fresh, golden brown dates, more than I had ever seen at once in my life. I looked around, thinking someone must have played a trick on me, but there was no one there who even knew my story. My hands trembled as I touched the fruit. They were soft and new, as if freshly picked from a tree. I fell to my knees, confused and afraid. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered to myself, wondering if God had remembered me after all this time. The words of the man who prayed for me came rushing back. God uses broken things to bring blessings. Was this what he meant? Could this be from the same God he prayed to? I began to sell the dates, and something strange happened. The more I sold, the more remained in the basket. I emptied one bowl, and when I looked again, the basket seemed full again. I tried not to draw attention, but soon people began to notice. A woman nearby gasped and asked how I was selling so much. I couldn't answer her. I only smiled through tears, whispering thanks under my breath. By the end of that day, I had earned more money than I had ever made in a whole month. When I went home that evening, I told my children what happened. They laughed, thinking I was joking. But when they saw the basket still half full, their eyes widened in disbelief. That night, I couldn't sleep. My heart was filled with fear and wonder at the same time. I knew something greater than me had happened. I didn't understand it, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the dates. It was a message. Something divine was reaching out to me. And that very night, I had a dream that would change everything I believed about God. That night, as I lay down to sleep, I could still hear the noise of the market in my ears and feel the weight of the miracle in my heart. I tried to make sense of it all, but my thoughts were too heavy. My children were already asleep beside me, their faces peaceful for the first time in a long while. I whispered a short prayer of thanks, though I didn't know who exactly I was thanking. Then I drifted into sleep. It was not an ordinary dream. It felt more real than anything I had ever known. I found myself standing in a wide open place, bright, calm, and filled with a light that didn't come from the sun. The air itself felt alive, and the ground beneath me shone faintly, like polished glass. I looked around, confused and afraid, wondering where I was. Then I saw a figure walking toward me from the distance. His steps were slow and steady, and though I couldn't see his face clearly at first, his presence filled the place with peace. When he came closer, I felt my knees weaken. I didn't know who he was, but something deep inside me recognized him, like my soul knew him before my mind did. He didn't speak at first, yet I felt his voice in my heart. It wasn't harsh or loud, it was gentle and full of love. He revealed to me that he had seen my pain, that he had watched every tear and every night of hunger. He made me know that what happened in the market wasn't luck, it was his doing. He wanted me to know that there was a life beyond what I had been taught, a truth that could fill the emptiness I carried for years. As he spoke, I saw behind him what looked like a long table filled with bread and shining light around it. He made me understand that he was the true giver of life, not just food for the body, but food for the soul. I felt warmth flow through me, and suddenly all the fear, loss, and loneliness I had carried for so long melted away. When I woke up, my pillow was wet with tears. The room was quiet, but my heart was racing. I knew what I had seen wasn't just a dream. It was something holy, something beyond this world. That morning, as the first light of dawn entered my room, I whispered softly, asking him to show me who he truly was. And from that day, my heart began to change. From that morning on, I could no longer live as if nothing had happened. The dream stayed with me, the light, the peace, the voice that spoke within me. I didn't understand everything he revealed, but I knew it was real. I knew it wasn't just imagination. The feeling of his presence was still resting in my heart even after I woke up. When I went to the market that day, people were still talking about the miracle of my dates. Some said it was magic. Others whispered that maybe I had found favor with Allah. But inside me I felt something different. The name of Jesus kept echoing in my heart like a quiet song. It was strange because, in all my life, I had been taught that Jesus was only a prophet, a great one, yes, but still a man. Yet, what I saw and felt in that dream told me he was more than that. I started to ask questions, though carefully. I didn't want anyone to think I had lost my mind. One afternoon, I noticed the same man who had prayed for me when my basket broke. He was helping an old woman carry her load through the market. When he saw me, he smiled gently, as if he already knew something had changed inside me. I walked up to him and asked him quietly about the God he prayed to. He didn't rush to answer. Instead, he invited me to sit under a tree nearby. He spoke softly, telling me stories about a man named Jesus, stories of love, forgiveness, and power. The more he spoke, the more everything in my heart began to make sense. It was as if my dream was being explained, piece by piece. He told me that Jesus came not just for some people, but for all people. He made me understand that Jesus was the one who brings life that never runs out, just like my basket of dates that never emptied. When he said that, tears ran down my face. For the first time, I felt seen, known, and loved completely. That night, I prayed differently. I didn't recite from memory like before. I spoke to God from my heart, in my own words. I told him that I wanted to know Jesus more, that I wanted to walk in the light I saw in my dream. And as I prayed, I felt that same warmth again, surrounding me like invisible arms holding me close. Something inside me whispered that this was the beginning of a new life. From that night onward, my life quietly changed. I didn't tell anyone at first. In Maiduguri, it was dangerous to speak about such things. Many would not understand. Some would think I had betrayed my late husband's faith. Others might even harm me. So, I kept my faith hidden, like a small fire burning deep inside a clay lamp, protected from the wind. Every morning before going to the market, I would whisper my own simple prayers, not long ones, just honest words. I thanked God for His mercy and asked Him to guide me. Sometimes I would feel that same warmth I had felt in the dream. It reminded me that He was still with me. The man who prayed for me, his name was Musa, began visiting the market often. He never pushed me to change. He only shared stories from a small book he carried. He called it the Word of God. I didn't know how to read well, but he would read to me stories about women who met Jesus, about blind men who were healed, about broken lives that were made whole again. Each story made me weep quietly because I saw myself in them. One evening, I went home and told my children about Jesus. They listened carefully, especially my youngest, who asked many questions. I didn't tell them everything, but I told them enough for them to know that this Jesus was the reason we still had food to eat, the reason my heart was no longer full of fear. I started to pray with them secretly before we slept. We would hold hands in the dark, whispering thanks for the day, for the food, for life, and for the one who had not forgotten us. Those moments became precious to me, small gatherings of faith in a house that once only knew sorrow. But even as I grew in this new peace, I knew one thing for sure: I could not keep this light hidden forever. The love I had found was too great to stay silent about. The day came when I could no longer hide what was burning inside me. It started with a group of children who often gathered around my stall in the market. They were small, most of them from poor homes, barefoot, their faces dusty but bright with curiosity. They loved my dates, and sometimes I gave them a few for free. I used to see them sitting under a tree nearby, reciting verses from the Quran as their teacher corrected them with a stick in hand. One afternoon, when the teacher didn't show up, the children wandered toward me. They asked if I could tell them a story while they waited. I hesitated at first. I didn't know what to say. Then something stirred in my heart, and I began to speak. I told them a story about a man who was kind, who healed the sick, who forgave even those who hurt him. I spoke of the man who gave life and hope to those the world had forgotten. The children listened quietly, their small eyes wide with wonder. When I finished, one of them asked, "Mama Halima, who was that man?" I smiled and said softly, "He is the one who gave me peace when I had nothing left. His name is Isa." They nodded, recognizing the name they had heard before, but none of them knew him the way I now did. From that day, they came often, after their lessons, before going home, sometimes even bringing more friends. I began to tell them stories every evening, not sermons, just stories. Parables, Musa called them. Stories about kindness, forgiveness, love, and faith. I never spoke his name too loudly, but I knew they could feel his presence in my words. As weeks passed, people began to notice. Some thought I was simply keeping the children busy, teaching them morals. But to me, it was more than that. I was planting seeds, small seeds of truth in young hearts. I didn't have much, but I had stories and I had love. And that was enough. The more I shared, the stronger my courage grew. I started using a small open space beside my house where children could gather after school. We used old mats, broken slates, and sometimes chalk borrowed from neighbors. I called it a learning place, but in my heart, I knew it was more than that. It was a small light in a dark world. And every night, I prayed that the same Jesus who found me in my sorrow would also find these children in their innocence. What began as a few children under a tree soon became something larger than I ever imagined. Word spread quickly in the neighborhood. Mama Halima teaches children kindness and peace. Some parents sent their sons and daughters to me, saying it was better for them to learn than wander the streets. They didn't know the full truth of what I was teaching, but I saw it as God's hand opening a door. Every afternoon, the children came, their laughter echoing through the narrow streets. We sat on mats under the shade of an old neem tree beside my house. I would begin with simple lessons, helping them read and write, and then I would tell stories about mercy, faith, and forgiveness. I used parables so they could understand. I never forced them to believe, but as I spoke, I saw something in their eyes, a quiet hunger for truth. Sometimes, I told them about a lost sheep and a shepherd who left 99 others just to find the one that was missing. They would ask, "Mama Halima, why would someone leave so many for just one?" I would smile and tell them, because love doesn't count numbers. It follows the one that is lost. They always nodded thoughtfully, even if they didn't fully understand. One evening, a mother came to me in tears. Her child had been sick for weeks, and she had no money for medicine. Without thinking much, I prayed with her right there in front of my small door. I asked the same Jesus who found me to show mercy to her and her child. The next day, she came running back, shouting that her son had slept peacefully through the night for the first time in many days. From then on, more mothers came. Some asked for prayers, others just wanted to listen. My small home became a place where people found hope. Muslims, Christians, anyone who was broken and searching. They didn't come for religion. They came because they saw love. Even Musa began helping me quietly. He brought small books, chalk, and writing boards for the children. Sometimes, he would sit with us and share about how love is the strongest weapon a person can ever carry. I didn't call it a church or a school. It was simply a place of light. But deep inside, I knew God was building something far greater than I could see. Yet, as the light grew, so did the attention. And soon, not everyone was happy about it. As the small school grew, not everyone saw it as a good thing. Whispers began to spread through the market that the widow named Halima was teaching strange things to children. Some said I was changing their beliefs, others said I had lost my mind since my husband died. The same people who once pitied me began to avoid me. One morning, as I arrived at my stall, I noticed 3 men standing nearby. They were from the mosque, old friends of my late husband. Their faces were serious, their voices low but sharp. One of them asked why I had been gathering children and speaking about Isa so often. I felt my hands tremble, but I told them the truth, that I only taught the children to love God and one another, to forgive, and to be kind. They looked at me with anger and said I was walking a dangerous path. After that day, many people stopped buying from me. Some parents withdrew their children from my school. Even neighbors who once greeted me now crossed the street when they saw me coming. It hurt deeply. There were nights when I cried alone, wondering if I had made a mistake by speaking openly about what I had found. But every time fear tried to drown me, I remembered the dream, the light, the peace, and the voice that told me he had seen my pain. I knew then that I could not go back. I had already tasted truth, and no amount of rejection could take it away. Musa encouraged me often. He told me that faith is tested in the fire, but what survives the fire becomes pure gold. His words strengthened me. I kept teaching even if it was only to a few. The children who stayed became stronger in faith. They would come to my door early, smiling, saying, "Mama Halima, tell us another story." And even in my tears, I found joy again. One night, when the fear became too heavy, I prayed long into the dark. I asked God why He would give me such light if it would also bring so much pain. As I prayed, I felt His presence again, gentle, steady, comforting. He didn't use words, but He made me understand that light will always attract both those who are drawn to it and those who fear it. That night, peace filled my heart once more. I realized that following Him was not about comfort, but about love, love that stays even when the world walks away. Now, as I look back on my journey, I see how every tear, every hunger, and every rejection had a purpose. I once thought my life ended the day my husband died, but I now understand it was the day my true life began. The same God who met me in my pain lifted me from the dust and gave me a new name, not by religion, but by love. To my brothers and sisters who believe in Christ, I say this from my heart. Hold on to your faith with gentleness, not pride. Let your light shine, but never use it to hurt another. There was a time I thought love could only belong to one group of people, but Jesus taught me something greater, that love belongs to all who are willing to receive it. He showed me that the greatest sign of faith is not in how loud we speak, but in how deeply we love. Do not be surprised when trials come. The world may not always understand your walk with God. Some will question you, others may reject you, and sometimes even those closest to you will not see what God is doing in your life. But remember, He sees. He knows. He never forgets His children. When you walk through dark valleys, keep walking. When your prayers seem unanswered, keep believing. And when your heart feels heavy, lift it again in praise, because that is where peace is found.